Guys, what is happening? I am at the PA Timber Show today, and I think it was last fall I did a video with Jim Walizer. He did a video on chestnut trees in Pennsylvania and stuff he's worked on, so I'm here today and he's going to give us a demonstration of the evolution of chainsaws from the early days to basically what we have now. So I'm pretty excited, so we'll get right into that. Thanks for watching.
Old muley saw. It was used back in the days when they had water wheels. Here's a picture of one back in the old days. If in that water wheel, it's interesting because it's so heavy and it has a flat tooth on it. If you feel that tooth, it's flat. So it chiseled its way through. Instead of cutting its way through, it chiseled its way through. And that was the original one they used. Then they used these pit saws like this. The guy stood up on top and the guy down below. And we got one of these pit saws here, right here. And a lot of people thought the guy down below was helping to pull the saw, but he wasn't. The guy on the top, they put a line across on the log, and he was sawing up and down. What would happen, he'd have a 2-inch plank. Pretty soon his saw got twisted, and the plank was only a quarter of an inch at the bottom, and that wasn't working. So they had to put a line on the bottom, a line on the top. And the guy down below had what they call a box here. He was a box man. And this wooden thing moved up here. And all he did was guide the saw down there. But the reason they had this thing here was, depending upon how tall the guy was, or how the log was and everything, he might be working down here or he might be working up here. So they made this box so you could move it up and down. This saw here was the first mechanical saw that worked before the chainsaws come on. We called it a drag saw. It had a little gasoline engine here with a concentric like this, and you put this up on the log and let the weight take care of it. But sometimes the weight wasn't enough, so they cut these teeth in here. They cut from the center out, and you see this one's cut deep here, and this one's cut. And when you go the other way when they're cutting the other direction. I think they had these things in here so that they would dig into the log, instead of the weight didn't take care of it all. They had to dig down in. So this is the kind of evolution they had with saws in the old days, the ones that they used.
How old is this one? Would you estimate?
Early 1920s.
Okay.
They had those.
Same with this?
I got a picture of one here you probably can't see, but maybe in the 1920s. Whenever it was after they had gasoline engines, so you had to figure out when they come out with these little putt-putt gasoline engines. That's when they started with that type of drag stuff. But that was before the chainsaws come along. The saws like had the V teeth like here. They had either 1 point and all this. Although this is actually a nice saw. They had the 2 points, but the English liked this, and they had them up in about 1900 yet with a 2-tooth. And then they had what they call the All-American with a 3-tooth. But the problem with these is they couldn't get the sawdust out. So the guys were trying to make another thing to take the sawdust out. Now when you were buck sawing and the log was laying down, get the sawdust out, you had no problem. But when the tree was standing up, you couldn't get that sawdust out. And all you were doing was riding back and forth with the sawdust. So they come up with a lot of different things. Here's a saw here, where they split these apart and they left a place in here to pull out the sawdust. And it worked better, but not good enough. Here's one that has 3 cutting edges, and what they call a gullet down in here to gather up the sawdust. And that worked better, but it still didn't work. There's some saws here we don't know. This saw here was dated 1887. It was made right after the Civil War. What these fine teeth are for, I have no idea. And I haven't been able to talk to anybody. I don't know what they were planning on sawing with it. But what I do know that some of the other saws used it incorporated is they put they put 2 cutting edges, and they put what would amount to that like a raker in there to pull out the sawdust. But what this is used for, I have no idea. So then they come out, and you can see here, they put the gullets down in here to try to pull out the sawdust. nothing really worked until they got to the point. And they had, of course, had bigger ones here. Was it probably a wood saw for firewood, trying to pull out the. Then they finally got to what they called the raker teeth. They started out putting longer teeth on here because the shorter teeth, after you sharpen them a couple times, the saw was done. So they started putting longer teeth on here, and I got some here that would show you on this one here. They put these longer teeth on here, but they started breaking off out here because they couldn't make them strong enough. So then they took these teeth here and they what they call perforated them. And they were making these with a big stamp. They didn't make these in a blacksmith shop. They had to make these in a factory, and they perforated them here so that they wouldn't break off. And you could sharpen this down here, and then actually sharpen it the whole way down. So that was so the perforations in here. There's a sign here. I don't know
what years were these saws again, or estimate, you think?
This saw here, when you have raker teeth, it was made after 1870.
After 1870.
Yeah, you didn't have raker teeth till 1870. So everything that was cut before that. In fact, down at Williamsport, when Williamsport became the lumber capital of the world from 1830 up to 1890s, all the trees before 1870 were cut down with an axe, not with a saw, because their saws just wouldn't work. So after they had them down, and they cut them up. In 1870, they come out with these raker teeth, and then they started making these drag saws. Here's a picture here. I don't know whether you can see it or not. It shows how the raker teeth work. The two teeth go through there and cut a track, and then the raker comes through and peels out the chips in between. And they actually come out as chips. So then they started making these type of saws here. Of course, this in here was back in this tooth design would have been back in the days of Columbus, and they could make this with a blacksmith shop. They could lay this out here and chip these things out in the blacksmith shop. Then they started making these saws like this. Sometimes they had 4 cutter teeth, sometimes they had 2, and here's one with 2, here's one with 3. I think the difference was these teeth cut on the same plane. These two teeth were cut on the same plane as these two. And I think on hardwood, this didn't get deep enough. And so this one have to come and cut a little deeper to make this raker work. So they had to pull it out of there. Now, when you were going to softwood such as this, where you've only got two teeth in here and a raker here, I think these got deep enough that the raker would work all right. I think that's why we have a difference between the 3s and the 2s. Somebody thought that each saw was going to be better. Why somebody thought that 3 was better than 4 or better than 2, I don't know. But somebody did.
What does this mean, Dexter?
Dexter's a name. When a saw has 3 teeth like that, they call it a Dexter. Okay. It's just a name.
Gotcha. What is that? That's what this is too?
No, this is an All-American, Great American saw. This is probably the first tooth that was designed in the United States.
The Great American was?
The Great American. The rest of these were European that come over. Okay. Usually Europeans developed them back in the 1800s. This saw here was a champion saw, bucking saw. It won all the championships back in the 1800s.
Okay. Because of the teeth?
Because of the teeth. I think I did show you here. When you measure the teeth here, you measure across there, there are about 12 cutting teeth in there. When you come down here like that, you've only got maybe 4 cutting teeth.
What is this saw? You know?
This saw here was a felling saw. It's a narrow saw.
Okay.
The narrow ones were the ones you used to cut trees down for 2 reasons. You didn't want to use the wide ones because if you had to put a wedge behind them, you didn't have room to put the wedge in. And the second thing is you had more surface dragging on here. When you were cutting up like this, the more weight you had, the better. But when you cut down like this, that extra drag in there took extra work. And so these felling saws like this, the skinny ones are the felling saws, and the fat ones like this are when the logs are cut up the ground. They were called bucking saws.
Gotcha.
Saws they come out with.
Pruning saws?
Pruning, to cut off apple trees and stuff. They had a fine tooth on the one side and a coarse tooth on the other side. The object was you cut in the bottom of the limb so it wouldn't peel off when you come down. Then you went up to the top and cut this. Now, I don't know why you couldn't just use this both sides, and some guy said, but I suppose the guy worked in an apple orchard would say something different. Well, here, the guy came up with a saw like this, but my question is, why did this guy think that this was going to be a better saw than this? I don't know. But somebody did, and somebody made a saw like that. With more aggressive teeth, longer teeth. Somebody had the idea that was going to be a better saw.
What year was this from, do you think? Estimate.
I couldn't give you an estimate.
Okay.
They had them for a long time.
Gotcha.
I don't know. But they come out with those a long time.
Gotcha.
You could make this in a blacksmith shop. A blacksmith could cut this out. But I think they made it much later than that. But pretty far back.
Yeah.
I can tell you.
How about these now?
Okay.
The hand tools and stuff.
It shows you here when you had to put a raker in, you would put the saw in here, and this is a tool. A lot of different ones made this way. The sharp teeth would come up here, and the raker would come in here. Now the raker had to be a little bit shorter than these other teeth, so you filed it off. And then after you filed it off, it would be about that much shorter than the teeth, and that's how you kept setting the rakers. Now the raker didn't get worn off much, but the other teeth did. And so when the other teeth got down here where the raker was up here, it wasn't working good. So you put this thing on there, filed it off, and put it down. It shows you a picture here. And these are all things to guide them.
This is a guide?
Yeah, that's a guide. It's got you look at the dates on there. Those are 1800 dates on there. Back in the 1800s when they were putting that on there. And of course, 1870. Now this is the change that if a saw has to have a set, it has to have one tooth going this way and one tooth going this way. And when you lose that set, it don't matter how sharp your saw is, it ain't going to work. You have to have that set because you have to cut a little wider slot going down through there than the rest of the way down. And this was to set those teeth. They had all kinds of things like this where you could set them different, and you put the tooth in there and squeeze it up and bend it up to where it's supposed to be. There's all different kinds of them that they come up with. Some are pretty simple, some are complicated, but you can put that in there, and that you see that bevel there. When that goes in there, you can push that in there and bend it all, get yourself a set. This thing here is an interesting tool. They would take this out to the woods with them, and sometimes when they were sawing a tree, the tree would sit down on the saw, and then that would squash the set out. Then it wouldn't. So they would drive a wedge in there and pull the saw out, but then it wouldn't saw because you ruined it. It wouldn't cut. So they would take this out and put it on a log out there, or use a stump, pound it down in there. That's what this is for, to hold it. And then you lay the saw out here, and then here at the end you take a hammer and you would pound it down. And you would do every other tooth, and then you would switch it over and do the other tooth coming the other way. And that would get you back in business for the day out there. Then when you got back, somebody could back and do it. But when you get out there and the tree come back and sit on the saw like that and squashed out the teeth, it wasn't going to cut it. So these are kind of rare.
What is this just called a wedge? Or what?
I don't have a good name for it. But
okay.
But you put them out there, here's how you do it. You pound it on that stump out there so it'll be good and solid. Lay the saw in here, put the teeth out here, and pound it down on the hammer. And make it. These are all the same thing for setting tooth. You know, you put the tooth in there and you set it.
Gotcha.
All time with different sets. They come up with. Here's a spider.
Spider?
Spider. It's an unusual thing, and you use it to use a set. If you were going to set this saw, you would put this on there like this, and that would gauge it. When this thing rocked, you would make it till it was just tight, and you would set it. If it rocked a little bit, you put a tooth on. This was a gauge on there you put on there to see if the tooth were at the right angle. It's called a spider. It would be an old type tool. That has a Simmons on. This was made by Simmons Company. Okay, we've been around pretty good.
What's that?
That's a wooden nail.
Wooden nail.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was such a thing.
Now when they're putting these barns together up here with wood, they didn't use nails to put them, didn't use metal nails to put them together. They put two logs together like this, and they put a hole in there, and then they would put this pin in there. And what they would do with a good carpenter, instead of the log coming up and going in like this, he would cut this off a little bit here so there's a little bit leeway in there so it would go in. Then he would cut a hole in there, and he would drive this thing in, and the cross pieces that were coming down, he would pin them together that way. I think they call it a trivet usually. But they made it trivet usually. And so you would bore a hole in there, but you would offset these holes when they went in like this, and then when you drove that in there, it would pull this in tight.
Center it.
Yep. And that's why you can't pull these old barns down. They're in there, like they're blocked in. They aren't just bucked up against each other. They're pulled in there. And it's just like putting a brace in there. So you put a brace in someplace.
Got it.
This is one of the later saws. They have a pretty good pin in here to bring out the sawdust, but they're not up to the rakers yet. But this is a pretty good steel. You can hit this and it'll really ring for you. And one of the things, this has a feathered edge. If you put your hand on here and you put it down here, I think you can feel this is thinner back here. They ground this off on the later saws. Took a grinder and ground that off and made it thin. Sometimes they call that a feather edge or this a feather edge. But you can feel it. Put your hand up in there. You can usually feel there's a difference.
Yeah.
On these chainsaws here, it's an old monster. They tell me they made these about 1954.
1954?
Probably, when they first came out. The first chainsaws they come out with had a gravity flow carburetor. And when you turn the motor on the side, the motor shut off. So they tried to make chainsaws that would cut this way, and then other chainsaws they let the motor this way and put the bar this way. Then they put a gear down here to boom back and forth. None of them worked. And most of them you couldn't get them, everybody you talked to, you couldn't get them started, couldn't keep them started. And so that's the way they were until finally somebody developed a carburetor that would work on its side, and now they got no problem with it. Upside down or whatever. It was pretty much the same thing in the saws. They had to work and work and work till they finally got something that worked. But these things, we used to joke around about them and said we couldn't get them started. We used to start them one day and let them run all night so we could use them the next day. And it was pretty much that way. And I talked to many guys that had these old ones. And when you get them started, then you take them up to the woods and you couldn't get them started.
We've came a long way.
I tell people now, I can cut a log faster with those things there than I can with this chainsaw. Because the chainsaw won't run.
Gotcha.
It's like that when you have a good chainsaw. If it don't start,
you're out of luck.
It won't come.
Thank you.
I hope you don't have to go to Canada.
Me too. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that with Mr. Jim Walizer. He sure has a wealth of knowledge. I'm sure I'm glad to know him. I've learned a lot from him over the years, so hope you enjoyed the video. I appreciate everybody who watches. Like I say, until next time, keep it outside. you.